Hello, I'm Jeremiah Foo from Malaysia. I'm a filmmaker that basically encompasses what I do. I'm the writer, producer, and composer, and everything else for the film Next Stop Somewhere.
Okay, so you were telling me that the trip towards the completion of the film is a movie by itself. So can you tell me a bit more?
Okay. Okay. The project began in 2020, end of 2020, when the pandemic was starting and the lockdown has been implemented in almost all countries in the world. So it was during that time when I was asked to come up with a story idea that talks about $100 bill, right? So, but I thought talking about money is something that is not. It can be very boring. So, and the guy who asked me, the funder who asked me about this, he says money is the root of all evil. I told him no, money is not the root of all evil, but the lack of it. Is when you think you have no money, you will want to do bad things. So bad things happen only when you want your heart to be filled with something. So it's the emptiness in the heart that wants you to, that makes you or drives you to do something different. It can be good, can be bad. So I counter-proposed the idea of maybe doing a story about the value of money in Asia, because if you look at the world currently, Asia is a very fragmented part of the world, very unlike Europe or the Americas, right? So where there's a universal language, where they use a somewhat universal currency, right? You have euros and then you have the US dollars. But in Asia, we have thousands of languages, right? India, China, Japan. Even in Japan, we have the Japanese language, the accent and all that has. Sometimes the same word can have totally different meanings, right, in Asia. So we are a very fragmented part of the world. And the value of money is so different. The same US dollar in Japan has totally different value from Cambodia, right? So that, and I think that difference in the perception of value has driven people in Asia to migrate to different countries. So we want the story about the story is about people wanting to live for a greener pasture. So it can be, and the greener pasture can mean financial freedom. It can mean freedom from oppression, or freedom to love, or freedom to whatever, right? So, but most of the time, we don't get it. You don't get what you want, most of the time. You pray to God, you don't get it. Yeah, so you may get very frustrated over it, or you may work harder the next round. So that's the core value, the core, what's that word? Value of the story came from there. Then we started working on the treatment. That's when we had some ideas, because the funder came from commercial film. So commercial film funders, they like to ask you one very important question: who is going to be the actor? So I proposed some names, and Anthony Wong was one of the names. And they said, okay, let's try to get him. So when we somewhat lock on the character Anthony, the story somewhat develops itself, because we wanted to talk about this, because there's this Hong Kong is right in 2019, 2018. There's a big wave of migratory activities in Hong Kong. In fact, it is the second or the top peak of migration out of Hong Kong to Britain, to Taiwan, to all that. So we thought it may be a storyline for us. So we started exploring that, and then and using Anthony's background as a Hong Kong actor with people thinking he may be problematic in a way, but he's not actually, right? And that's became like the foundation of the development of the character as Wong in the film. So, and then from there, he moved to Taiwan, and then Taiwan is known to be one of the freer countries in Asia, where they are the first to allow same-sex marriage, for example. So we thought, but is that the ultimate goal for people who want same-sex marriage, right? To get married. So in the story, we there's this character who may not be happy with her relationship, in her relationship with her partner. So what we are trying to say is happiness it's not so easy to achieve, right? So that's the part. And back in the early late 90s, early 2000, no, actually late 90s, a lot of Malaysians go to Vietnam to look for wives, buy wives. So, and a lot of them want to leave the country thinking that all these Malaysian people have money. So they dress up to be rich. They go there, and then when they finally come to Malaysia and then or whatever country, they feel cheated because so you may not get what you want, right? So that's so when we develop characters, all the characters have that same irony or the same predicament when they hop from one hole to another hole, only to realize that the other hole may be deeper, right? So that's how the story came about, and so we started developing, and then I started looking for because it was produced during the pandemic. We wanted to do the Taiwan story in Taiwan, and the Malaysian story in a place called Ipoh in Malaysia. So that will mean at that time we have this problem about quarantine. So I cannot use the same director. I cannot use the same team of people. So we have to use different team of actors and production team in the different countries so that we can save costs. If not, quarantine costs can be very high. So so in the end, also out of necessity, we had we had different directors in the film. But if you notice, when in the credit, we only credited the Malaysian director, James Lee, and not the Taiwanese director. That was because they had the producer on the Taiwan side requested for their names to be redacted. Yeah, so for safety reasons. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was it working with Anthony Wong?
Oh, I had the privilege to work with him directly. I was one of the characters in the film because the actor who's supposed to play that part was COVID positive. So, and then the replacement of that actor had also got COVID. So the director said, okay, it's God's will for me to appear. So I'm the accidental cameo. So I had the chance to work with him directly on set on that particular scene. And in that scene, originally, Anthony has dialogue. He has 3 or 4 lines of dialogue, right? But he managed to turn all those dialogue into expression without saying anything. So that really impressed me because it's difficult to act but not act, to show but not tell. And to do that in one natural stroke, that's really impressive. So professionally, I think he's great to work with. He is very intelligent in interpreting the character. He doesn't look at the character and play face value. We had lots of discussion, even in development stage, to see if it's natural for him to say certain words and all that. And he is very open to working that way. I understand at some point he wanted us to do his character in a certain way, but he's still willing to listen to us because we are younger. I'm not that young, but we are younger, and then of course the director is young, but he's willing to let go of some of his principles and do what we wanted to do, what wanted him to do. Yeah.
And for the actresses, how did the casting work, and how did you cooperate with them?
Because due to the sensitivity of the films, actually, when we call for casting, not many responded. We only had 3 female actors who responded to the casting. So naturally, people will. I like to use a cast that is suitable for a character instead of a cast that looks good for a character. So that concept is in line with actually the whole film. We did not choose a character by looks, but by the suitability of the character and the merit. Whether they can naturally play the character naturally. Like the Malaysian girl who played the Vietnamese girl, she literally went through Vietnamese class to learn to speak Vietnamese, and during the entire time of the shoot, she was in character. She doesn't even want to talk to us. So
Method actor.
It's very method. Yeah. So, but of course, she has played in other roles in other films that have been selected in other film festivals. Right. Yeah.
Okay. And you said you also were in charge of the soundtrack. Can you tell me a bit about that? How did you work on it? Let's say.
The sound.
Okay.
My career started as A&R, so I do music in the very beginning. So sound design and music supervision has always been part of what I do. The current, what's that word? The most modern composers now for film, we look for sound elements in the film and turn them into an instrument in the film. So in the entire film, all the scenes that happen in Taiwan has no music except the harmonica playing. That was the only music in Taiwan. But for the Cambodian girl, we wanted the music to play more role in depicting how the characters feel, right? So instead of using very musical instruments, we use a lot of human voices, but synthesized human voices, sampling and all that. So I purposely some of the parts we purposely repeated some noises. So it makes the audience uncomfortable. So the idea is to subtly nudge them into thinking, into knowing something is not what it seems in the film. So we do that a lot in this project. Yeah.
Okay. And how was James Lee? How is working with him? Would you say?
Oh, James. James is a veteran in Malaysia. He's been around for a long time. The twist of the girl getting pregnant is his idea.
Okay.
So I was, oh, this is such a great idea, right? So so he, what's that word? He is very playful in the way he tells the story. For example, there's this part where the protagonist was trying to make the washing machine work. James Lee's one of his famous work is the beautiful washing machine. So there are a lot of things that he drops in that makes it very interesting, and they are so subtle that if you know, if you don't, it's fine. And he drops a lot of those hints in the film, like the idea of hair salon. We initially it was not as subtle as that. Hair salon back in those days have there are two types of hair salon: the dubious one and the not dubious one. So back in those days, when we say, "Oh, you go and do shampoo your hair," it means differently. So he brings language from that era back to current, so which is very nice. So James, in that sense, is very intelligent in putting details into the film.
Okay.
Yeah.
And about cinematography, let's say what you want to do in the visual aspect of the film.
Okay, there are actually two cinematographers, right? The cinematographer in Taipei has worked on multiple feature films already. So he already, and before we start shooting, I told him, can we shoot in the color that it will show on screen. So we will not do anything in color grading. Color grading, we will no artistic color grading. We'll just as is. So we put a lot of effort in. So all the light bulbs, we change all the light bulbs to make sure the light value and the color is what we see in the end. So he is very meticulous in doing that. So I kind of like working with him that way. There's the ending scene where there's this hallucination kind of effect. That part was a pleasant surprise because I was there during the shoot and I didn't know what he was doing. But by the time it ended, it came out pretty nice. Because there's a part where Anthony was Wong, the character, was panicking because his friend disappeared. So we wanted that slowly, we are in reality but we're not in reality kind of effect, and that was totally in camera. So we didn't do anything special effect. The Malaysian cinematographer is similar, but I think James is being a more art film, festival film kind of director. His camera work is very long, right? And that shows in the storytelling, which is makes it difficult for me as a producer, because now you have two different visual language, and then how do we make it gel together? That was when it becomes somewhat challenge for us. And also in the beginning, we had decided to use that aspect ratio. 1 is to 1.1 and 3:4. The aspect ratio to create that sense of claustrophobic sense. So that was decided right in the beginning, and we frame as we shot. Yeah.
So you are very hands-on in general with your.
Yeah, I am. I am.
Okay.
Because I used to teach film. Yeah. So I know a little bit about everything. So. But I don't know enough to
shoot the film.
No, actually, shooting the film is tedious. And then being lazy, like most producers. I'd rather sip a glass of wine while they are.
Okay. And was there ever a director that you had problems with in that regard, that you are very hands-on?
Yes and no. In the beginning, when they thought I'm just a busybody, that was when it's bad. But when they know I know a bit and my suggestions are useful, then it's not so bad. So the beginning of getting to know each other, that was the more difficult part. I think a lot of producers who are very involved in the actual production or the development will face this kind of problem. As opposed to a lot of producers in Hollywood or the the bigger studios where producers have final say in everything. Our part of the world is slightly different, where the director has a lot more say than their counterparts in the West. So, but that part is when we have to negotiate. We will have to compromise. We talk. We have to talk over it, right? If a glass of beer can't do it, make it two.
Okay. And are you usually in charge of funding as a producer?
Yes, I worry about funding, and I also take care of the distribution part of it. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
How is it nowadays funding independent
Oh.
films?
Okay. There's money in the market looking for films to invest. The challenge now is to educate the funder into funding films that into explaining to the funder why they should fund your film. I think that's where the challenge is. Right now, for example, Chinese New Year, right? This Chinese New Year period in Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, China, there were 18 Chinese New Year films for 15 days of Chinese New Year. So if you watch one film a day, you have more films than days for Chinese New Year. So but some films made a lot of money, like Ne Zha, right, in China. They sort of broke Hollywood record. I have to do inverted commas because a lot of the tickets were not.
I know.
But in Malaysia, we had films that broke the 10 million ringgit mark, which is a good news. And we had one film broke 10 million, and another film hit almost 9 million, and then 3 others averaged 3 million, and then the rest didn't do so well. But it actually means that there is still market. People still want to spend money to go to the cinema to watch films. So I would see next year the investor will be investing more to try to capture this market. But the thing is, we need to explain to the investor that we have 365 days in a year, not 15 days. So we should be making films for other days as well. So that's where the challenge is, because now investors, they are only looking at a certain type of genre, certain type of topic for a certain season for screening, for exhibition. So in Malaysia, that's the situation now. In China, generally the market isn't, the investment market isn't that good because the money has moved somewhere else. They are not so keen on investing in features, so they are doing a lot of short form vertical screen projects. Those are still getting a lot of funding in investment, but feature films that have dropped. So
I want to ask, who are these investors usually? So, I haven't met anyone to take it. I mean, apart from funds like, let's say, Hubert Bos, that is from Rotterdam.
Okay, we don't have investing institutions, not like the Europe or even Hollywood, where they're actually investment institution that invest in films, right? In Malaysia, a lot of money comes from the government. So FINAS has a grant for production, but it's not so easy to get the grant. should I say you need to have the right connection? I'll probably be condemned to hell if I say this. Yeah, but you probably need to know how to please the people, the selection committee to invest in your film. So sometimes you scratch your head, not understanding why certain films are funded, but they are. So that's one funding. Another funding body are the stations. The TV stations are also funding, but their funds are really very low. It's so low, you wouldn't call it funding. Yeah, so it's pretty bad. And so that's for Malaysia. For Singapore, there are some private funders. In Malaysia, a lot of rich private funders that are probably, yeah.
But why do they do it? Do they get their money back in the end, or is it like tax?
Some do. Okay, recently there is this big funder who has entered the market. He funded Chong Kek On's Midsummer Snow, and I think he is also funding some projects for Wu Ming Jin and all that. So yeah. And then there's one guy who is now in Japan, also funding for Malaysian film, but he used to be, he's Malaysian, but he used to be like the chair of, the ED, Executive Director of FINAS. So he is funding a film for Edmund Yeo. So there are funders who are willing to fund this type of project where the money goes beyond 3 million. So in Malaysia, 3.5 million and above is big fund, is big budget.
You mean 3.5 million? That's dollars, right?
Ringgit. US dollar is about $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah, anything above $1 million US dollar is considered big budget.
Okay.
So a small budget is maybe 200,000 US dollars in that. So it's about $1 million ringgit. Million 200 ringgit is considered a normal budget film. There are films that are made within, there's a example, last year there's a film that was made under 400,000 ringgit, but a lot of people in the industry help per name, pro bono. So in that sense, films can still be made with very low budget in Malaysia, and some want to shoot their film in Malaysia because of the incentive. The film in Malaysia incentive, FIMI, FIMI. That one gives you a rebate of 30%, up to 30%. So it has attracted a lot of projects to go to Malaysia to shoot. So that's one thing in Malaysia. So there are private funders who we jokingly say they have too much money with no place to spend. Yeah, there are some.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in general, how would you describe the state of the industry in Malaysia right now? Because as I was talking before, like 2023 was like a great year for Malaysian cinema, but I'm not sure if it's keeping up to that year.
Okay, when we say 2023 was awesome for Malaysia was because of two films, Tiger Stripe and Abanding.
Yeah.
Right? Tiger Stripe is a co-pro, 9 countries. Malaysia is a very small portion of the co-pro. And when it was finally screened in Malaysia, the director disowned the film.
Yeah.
Right? So is that really a good year for Malaysia? We don't know. But if we are talking about commercially success year in Malaysia, yeah, because there are a number of Malay films that did really well commercially, but those films will probably not travel in festivals or even outside Malaysia. Right? There are some that are very nationalistic in nature. In fact, there's a film called Mariam. It's an excellent film, but that film is banned in Malaysia. Right? So we are a very contradicting country where really good stuff don't get screened in Malaysia. Yeah. So So the current state of the cinema industry in Malaysia right now is festival films. There are more filmmakers now. In fact, there's a new film festival called Raintown Film Festival that focuses on films coming from Taiping, a town in Perak. So he, the programmer or the curator of the festival, runs a cinema magazine, annual that publishes annually. So he has been promoting art film in Malaysia, and that's coming about. So there's still hope in in promoting proper cinema in Malaysia, and there are a lot of art cinema clubs in Malaysia that are pushing, but they may not be too legal because they are screening without rights.
Okay.
Yeah, but Raintown is legit. He actually pays for the screening fee and all that. So, but it's giving a bad name to the exhibition industry, for those who are not doing,
And censorship is a big problem, I guess.
Censorship is a big problem, but I think the bigger problem is self-censorship, because we know what can't be told, so we avoid stuff, and sometimes censorship totally changes the meaning of the story, right? For example, Midsummer Snow. If you watch elsewhere in the world, that film is about social unrest after a general election.
Yeah.
In Malaysia, all the elements of the general election has been blurred out. So it becomes racial, it becomes religious. So the meaning of the film is totally different. So it may be good because it has generated some discourse in the society, but I think since it changes the meaning of the film, I don't know whether that's what the filmmaker wanted in the very beginning. Yeah.
And the last question, I guess, future projects, what we will be working on next?
Oh, okay. We are only as good as our next project, right? So we are currently working on, in development, we are developing a Japanese film. Hopefully we can shoot in Kyoto within the year.
Can you tell me who's the director? Or?
I'm using one of my students, a young director from China. Why him? As an educator, I've been teaching cinema in the last 15 years in China. I find that older people need to leave an empty chair so that new people can sit there. So, and if we have the ability to let someone sit on the chair, we should do it, because sometimes fresh ideas are good ideas. So
Okay. And anything else? That's it, or are you working on this or anything else? Or
we have a slate of projects. We are also looking into horror films. So because horror is a big genre in Southeast Asia, and a lot of horror films are made with very low budget, and you don't need to have a known cast, right? The cast can be relatively unknown. As long as the story is scary enough, it will do well. So we are going to start developing Southeast Asian centric films with Japanese and Korean aesthetics. Because I think it's time for us to merge the whole Asian thing into one cauldron and see what we can get out of it.
Well, I guess that's it. Thank you very much.